Hi Devoxians, welcome to my presentation about Java Security Manager. My name is Josef Cacek and I am a Red Hatter. I work as a quality engineer on JBoss, testing mainly security components. What we will talk about is, the first part will be about Java Security Manager, why you should care about it, what is it, and how to use it. And second part will be about new tool, ProGrade library, which makes your life with Java Security Manager easier. So let's start. Do you run? I am experienced hobby runner. I finished first ultramarathon this summer. Yeah, but the more important question for this presentation is, do you run Java applications with Java Security Manager enabled? Hands up, who uses Security Manager? Yeah, few of you. Maybe you are a little bit safe. But the other ones, you should be afraid. You are in danger. Yeah. What are the threats which you could meet in your Java applications? Now, first of all, bugs in the libraries. Everybody knows it. For example, somebody is rewriting Swing application to a web application, and of course, there are system exit calls in the Swing application, and what matters? Nothing. Yeah? It works as expected. But if you do javalang system.exit in a deployed web application, what happens? Your JVM gets down, and all deployed applications gets down too. The second group of the threats are hidden features. Your application or library can send usage statistics to its author, but maybe not only usage statistics. What if part of your file system is sent to the author? And the third, the simple one, from the man in the middle, if you have trusted library, well tested, but you downloaded it through an untrusted channel. Nevertheless, Java has a solution, and the solution is Java Security Manager. And this component is standard part of Java SE, so everybody has it. But the problem is, it's not enabled by default. What the Java Security Manager does is, it checks if caller, what is you as an authenticated user, or piece of code, has permissions, privilege, to run protected actions. For example, read file system, send data over the internet, and so on. How does it work? You have some protected code, and you, as an author of an application, should say what is protected code. And you should call Security Manager to check if a caller has permission to run your code. And the Security Manager, through a policy object, checks if the code has the permissions. So, for example, if you look into javalang system, get property, set property, there are sensitive actions. And you will find on the very top of the methods the code similar to this one. Get Security Manager, and if it is not null, it means the Java Security Manager is enabled, then call check permission method on it, with given permission. What happens if the code doesn't have permission is access control exception is thrown. Another part which was employed in the process was policy object. It's a singleton which keeps your permissions assigned to your applications. And the permissions could be defined based on code path, code base, or class signatures, or on user authentication, classic jars. For example, I have simple policy file here. The first grant is without any limitation, so it grants file permission reading and writing to a temporary folder. So every piece of code can read and write from /tmp. The second permission is based on code path, class path. So I grant permissions to JBoss modules jar, and I grant these two permissions. And the third permission is based on class signature. So first of all, I need to use some key store where is certificate with alias JBoss, and based on this alias, I can grant signature. In this case, it's a special type of permission named all permission. What does it mean? If you have all permission, you don't need any other. You automatically are allowed to do anything. And of course, usually you put more grant entries into your policy file. So the third component was permissions, and the permissions are your rights to do the protected action. It has type, it is Java type, it has target or name, for example, property name if you are reading or writing system properties, or file path if you are using file permissions, and it may have actions. In our case, for example, in the file permissions, there were read and write, the same for property permissions. And as we already mentioned, all permission is special type of permission, and it's automatically granted to system classes. So all Java classes from Java runtime has this all permission assigned. Now let's look on a simple example how does permission checking works. Let's imagine we have simple application with two jar files. First jar file appjar contains some main class which calls a util class from the second jar, and the second class reads by using file reader some system configuration file. If this Java Security Manager is enabled and you don't have permission, then you will see access control exception with a stack trace. And the stack trace, first of all, you will see some system classes, but we said system classes has assigned all permissions, so we don't care about them. The more important is that both jar files needs to have the permission, the checked permission assigned to get rid of the access control exception. So we have to assign permission to applibjar and appjar. So every caller on a stack trace has to have the checked permission. How to start with Java Security Manager? It's very simple. Just set Java Security Manager system property with no value. Use Java -d, Java Security Manager, and the rest of your arguments. It's all. Java Security Manager is enabled. But usually when you do this, your application starts after the big crashes after the real start, because usually you load some configuration from a file, you open some ports and so on. So what you need to do is to define your policy file. And the path to this file you will specify in second system property Java Security Policy. You optionally can enable some debug output by using third system property. For example, when you want to start JEdit text editor with Java Security Manager, it can look like this. Simple -d Java Security Manager, specify policy, and optionally enable debug. So the message from this presentation should be, try to use Java Security Manager. Don't be ashamed. However, it's not only positive. Java Security Manager has also some issues. One is performance, as we can expect. If you have more and more permissions, your application gets slower and slower because all permissions has to be checked. And the second problem is the policy file tooling. In your Java installation, probably there is a policy tool, binary, which is an ugly GUI, which please don't use, and use text editor instead, because it doesn't work simply. And the second problem is, even if you enable debug output, then the Java Security Manager will throw access control exception. So you have to debug one by one your permissions and search what is missing, what is missing, what is missing, and one by one add it to your policy file. And it's not very good. But we have a solution. And the solution is ProGrade library, which is a set of security managers and policy implementations. It's really open source under Apache license. It started about 2 years ago as a part of a diploma thesis of Ondra Lukáš. And then I joined and we made something together. And the ProGrade policy has, ProGrade component has ProGrade library has 3 main components. The first is policy file with deny entries. The second is policy file generator. And the third is missing permission debugger. We will look into them in a little bit more details. So, ProGrade policy with deny rules adds, as we've seen, grant entries. So this policy adds deny entries. So we can say, I allow this big set of permissions, for example, full access to temporary folder, but I want to deny access to a single subfolder. You then don't have a chance to do it with standard security manager. And with ProGrade security manager, your policy file can look like this. You can use both grant entries and deny entries. The second component is policy file generator, and we think that no user interface is better than any user interface, and it's simple to use. So we decided to do policy tool once again and in a better way. And the third component, permissions debugger, it's a simpler but for us better version of -d Java security debug argument, and it doesn't throw access control exception. So you will see missing permissions in your log files, on your console, but you can still work with your application and debug what is happening. Yeah, and now the demo. I will show you how to work with Java Security Manager and with the tooling I mentioned. Wildfly, which I will use, is Java EE 7 implementation developed in Red Hat, and yeah, it's a complex application, so it needs a lot of permissions. So let's look into it. The first of all, some preparation. I've already made a change to a startup script where I edit ProGrade jar to a class path, and because it's not possible to use -jar and -class path together, Java arguments, I used -cp, and then I had to provide class name which I want to start. So it was one change, and the second change I will do later. Let's just check if Wi-Fi is starting. Yeah, and we are starting without security manager, and we can check it here. Yeah, Wi-Fi is running. So stop it and try to enable Java Security Manager. So I will do changes to a second script or second configuration file, which is in binary directory, standalone conf, and I don't have permissions because I want to in text editor. Yeah, here it is, and as I said, the first step is to use the Java Security Manager. And as I said, it will probably fail. I am missing property permission module path with action write. What can I do? Yeah, I should grant it to some jar, but which jar? So to check to which jar should I add this permission, I will enable security debug. And now we can see that we are checking JBoss modules jar, and it is missing the permission. So I can write a simple policy file where I grant the missing permission to the specified jar file. And let's go with it. There is some problem. And I don't see it now, but I think we are missing again the permission. It should be it. Yeah, I see it now. Access control exception. Now we are missing boot module loader read permission, property permission. So I could go one by one with adding these permissions, but if there is a lot of permissions, it's really boring. So usually users, when they hit this, they simply write policy file like this. Just use Java Security or permission, and they say, yeah, I use Java Security Manager. Don't ask me for policy file. Yeah, and if I do this, of course, it should work. It was not the one. Yeah, it was the one. Yeah, I have enabled debug output, so it's logging. But it's running. Yeah, as you can see, the debug property writes the debug output to error stream, so it's red. Hardly readable. And if I reload it here, it works. But it's the same as if you have Java Security Manager disabled, but it has not so good performance. Okay. So the next step, and here it is interesting. I will use a security manager named policy file generator GSM from the ProGrade library. And I will specify where the newly generated policy file should be stored. So it should be in JBoss home /wildfire policy. And if I run it, it's starting and it's running. So we can look now if we have some generated policy file. Yeah, we have one. And it contains lot of permissions. Yeah, you can see there are permissions for JBoss modules jar and permissions for some extra Java classes. I think it is encryption. So what can I do now is I can use the newly generated policy file with default security manager. And I hope it works. Yeah, we are on.
But you should go on your whole application to generate the...
Yeah, of course. You should go through all your applications to see or to generate for your application the permissions which it needs. Because now I have only permission which are needed to wildfire start, nothing more, and maybe wildfire stop. So if you need permissions for your application, you need to go through. So the permission is checked. Okay. Yeah, what I wanted to do is to remove a permission now. Module path. It was the first checked, if I remember correctly, to see that it really works. Yeah, and we are on the same state as we were in the beginning. So it works. We have policy file. And as I already shown, we could use Java Security Debug to debug what is missing in our policy file, but it will throw the access control exception as we already seen. Now I can use the third component of ProGrade library, the dump missing permission GSM, the missing permission dumper or printer, which prints to system error stream the missing permissions. And because we removed one, there should be one entry from it. Yeah, and we can see it. Wait, I will scroll back. And here it is. And what can I do now is I can copy and paste this part and put it on the right place. If I am able to do it. Okay. Wildfire policy, and I can make a new grant entry, for example, and put it into it. And that should be it. Let's see. Yeah, but I don't have the right security manager enabled now. So let's enable default security manager. Yeah, and it's starting. So that was components of the ProGrade library. And let back to the slides. So the message should be use the Java Security Manager, the first message. The second, use the Java Security Manager. And the third, make it easy with ProGrade. And to conclude, ProGrade is fighting Java Security Manager issues. The first one, the first component, the ProGrade policy or ProGrade Security Manager helps to fight with performance issues by adding the deny entries, and the policy file generator and missing permission debugger are, I think, good replacement for old policy tool. It's all from my presentation. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, now is the time. If not, thank you. There's a question?
Yeah, there was a question back there.
Hi.
One of the issues you mentioned with the Java Security Manager is performance. Does ProGrade have anything to improve its performance?
The performance issue which I mentioned was mainly about count of permissions. If you have big policy file, a lot of permissions granted, then you have to check one by one if the permission implies the checked one. Yeah? And when you use ProGrade with deny rules, you can usually simplify the permissions, the policy. Thank you. Some other questions? No. Thank you.